Hi, this is Jack Stanley, and having recently gone through eye surgery, which basically would not allow me to read, I couldn't watch too much stuff, but I had a chance to listen to a tremendous amount of videos. And of course, as I worked my way through many different topics, I got to the Kennedy assassination. And I listened and heard various views, various ideas, various concepts, various conspiracy theories. And one thing that came to mind to me, and I have mentioned some of this before, but I want to go into a little bit more detail, and that is that we don't know who shot Kennedy. We're really not sure. I'm sure somebody does know, but the fact is that it's suggested, of course, the Warren Commission, which has been totally disproved. Oswald. We hear about the grassy knoll. Also, there was a lot of research done on ballistics, and they felt that it was actually a Secret Service agent who was standing up with a gun looking to defend the president, lost his footing and fired and hit the president in the head. As fantastic as a tale as that is, it actually does have some concepts and things going for it. Several people smelled gunpowder, but that doesn't mean it came from that area. Could have been the grassy knoll, could have been all over the place. But that's not what I want to talk about. I'm not interested right now in who did the shooting. I'm interested in what became of the body and what is the body. Now, when Kennedy died at Parkland Hospital, his body was transported to Air Force One in a bronze ceremonial casket, quite ornate. That casket eventually found its way to the National Archives, along with a locker containing Kennedy's brain, tissue samples, slides, all kinds of things dealing with the autopsy. Now, the only people that had keys to that locker were Robert Kennedy and Evelyn Lincoln, who was John F. Kennedy's private secretary. An interesting thing happens in 1966 that Robert Kennedy pushes to have that ceremonial bronze casket crated, holed, taken out to the North Atlantic in its deepest area, and sunk. He said he didn't want it to become a macabre attraction. Now, my feeling is this: if nothing wants to be found of the body, what's the best way to get rid of it? Take everything from that box that contained the brain and everything else, put it in the casket, and get rid of it. It's gone. In fact, there's nothing left of the body. I mean, there is no tissue samples, there's no brain, there's dried blood, yes. But that's problematic. Now, that doesn't tell us too much about some of the wounds and things like that. One of the things I've often wondered was if indeed Robert Kennedy, or perhaps somebody else, removed everything from that locker, put it in that casket, taken out to the North Atlantic, and sunk. Perfect way to get rid of everything. We'll never find anything. Now, there was also a talk, John F. Kennedy's body was exhumed in 1967. Now, what I mean by exhumed, the casket wasn't opened or anything like that. But the casket is contained within what is called a Wilbur Vault. And the Wilbur Vault remained sealed during the exhuming. So what they did basically is they pulled the vault out of the ground and moved it to the present location of the Kennedy grave, which is about 150 feet away from where it had been. That was done, and it was said that the brain was buried with the body at that time. Now here's my question. Why would the brain be removed a year earlier than the exhuming? Interesting point to bring up. The brain and everything was looked for in the end of 1966, and it was gone. The casket had been sunk already. I'm sure there was no quality control there checking to see what was inside the casket. Sure, it was gone. Makes sense to me if you want to get rid of everything, because if you'll notice, I mean, the Secret Service was very careful to protect everything. Now, if indeed Kennedy had been shot by accident by one of the Secret Service men, they were very careful to protect their own. Photographs vanished, x-rays vanished, everything vanished. It's very little. There's just a lot of faux images, one might say. Now, if everyone was so careful to make sure that everything of Kennedy could not be found, and protecting what happened in the autopsy, there probably had to be a lot of protections to keep the future away from Kennedy's body. Now, I had been sick, I had surgery, and so I spent an awful lot of time listening to a lot of videos, the audio parts. And many different concepts were brought up about many different subjects, but it entertained me, and it made me think. If indeed there was a strong desire to make sure that the present time, 1963, no one knew what happened, I am sure that they went out of their way to make sure that no one in the future would figure it out either. That is why I think, and just a conjecture on my part, that it has been suggested countless times to exhume the body of John F. Kennedy. My point is, I doubt there is a body left to exhume. If I was going to go through so much trouble to make sure all the ends were covered in the present time, 1963, and thinking in the future, wouldn't we make sure that the body would be put into a condition where it would dissolve quickly? I'm almost positive, can't prove it, that there is hardly a body left in that Wilbur Vault. I am quite sure that that body dissolved very quickly. And I would imagine that if indeed an exhumation took place, they would find relatively nothing. I can't imagine that they would allow the body to be buried without making sure there would be no body shortly afterwards. If we're going to look at conspiracy in 1963, we have to sit there and look at the other direction. The best evidence was the body. It has been, this November will be 53 years. In the natural process of time, a body will very much decompose in that point. There's, even in natural terms, there shouldn't be too much left of him. But I am sure that there's a lot less of him than there would be naturally. Just a point to think of. I don't think the brain is buried on the grounds with him. I think the brain was in that casket. I think the slides were in that casket. I think anything that needed to be rid of, what a perfect place to put it. maybe the slides, maybe the photograph, maybe the x-rays were all in that casket. It's an awful thing to think of. And maybe Robert Kennedy was interested in getting rid of the casket. And maybe he might have been party to or unaware that all the various other things were removed. He might have done it as a sign of love for his brother, to protect him. It's hard to know. No one ever took any notes about this. No one knows what happened. The only reason we know everything was gone is they did an inventory check and discovered everything was gone. And so by 1967, when the body was exhumed to be moved, there was no brain to put anywhere. And I'm sure that today that there is no body. I'm sure as much evidence as possible is gone. Because this heinous crime is almost totally proved to be a conspiracy. And that there was a desire to remove the president from the scene. And once he was gone, there was a massive, and I repeat, massive cover-up to make sure that there was nada evidence to give any indication of what truly happened. And the Warren Commission was totally and completely a sham. So, I happened to notice that so many people talked about exhuming him. But I got to tell you, I don't think there's anything there. Not now.